Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to Square Ring Podcast, everybody. Okay.
He's still coughing. I'll just finish it up. Tonight, here at the Squared Ring Podcast, we got an incredible guest. He's a three-time NWA heavyweight champion. He's held titles all over the place. We got Southern NWA champion, Southern Junior Heavyweight champion, Lonestar Tag champion, NWA Lonestar champion. Currently, the AIWF World Champion. We are speaking to none other than the Golden Boy, Greg Anthony. Greg, how you doing tonight?
Rocking and rolling, guys. How you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Yeah, I
I
cannot.
think Nate's having hard times.
Yeah, Nate's having problems. He's probably just need a drink and calm that vocal range there. So, Mr. Anthony, just want to talk a lot about your title reigns, a lot about how you got started. So I'm just going to hit you off right from the beginning. Were you a fan of wrestling as a kid, or did you grow into it?
I was absolutely a fan. I tell this story all the time. Like, my earliest memories of life are not of a birthday cake or a new bike or anything like that. It's of watching wrestling. It's sitting on my grandmother's knee watching wrestling, and it was watching Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair and Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson and that whole Crockett bunch. So yeah, I've been a fan for as long as I can remember.
That is awesome.
I think that answers the question.
Yeah,
that answers the question. WCW, WWF.
So I've always been drawn to, even when I was a kid, I was drawn to like the seamless Southern heels. When I was a kid, I loved all the baby faces and hated all the heels. But for some reason, I knew when I saw Arn Anderson versus Tom Zink, I knew it was going to be a great match. So I was always drawn to that seamless Southern heel, the Arn Anderson, the Tully Blanchard, the Ric Flair, the Ted DiBiase. Those kind of workers were always kind of in my wheelhouse. And because of that, I will say WCW, but the thing about that is New York took a lot of those Southern talents, up there too. So like, you still had Southern wrestling in New York. So like, I'm just more of a fan of Southern wrestling, I guess.
Yeah, but it seems like it went comic booky when it went up to New York.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, because that was their brand. That was going to be, the glitz and the glamour and stuff like that. But you go back and you watch some of that stuff, and they took guys like everyone that was in everyone that was in WWF in those late '80s. Like, everyone was a star. You know what I mean? Like, everyone was a star and like a top talent somewhere else in the territories, right? And it's like seeing them say, you don't have to have JYD, sell out the crowd and go, 20 minutes. He can go 6, and still pop the house and stuff like that. So it was just fun to see that all culminate together,
Yeah.
man, you said Zink, and I haven't heard that name in forever. And I remember watching WCW and watching him go against the Horsemen like Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson. That right there is my favorite tag team. I would say them and Doom. Back when it was Butch Reed and Ron Simmons.
Yeah,
I like
absolutely.
I love the whole gimmick with the mask. You didn't know who they were right away. I wish they would have prolonged that instead of demasking and let it be known. But Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, hands down, was probably the best technical tag team I ever watched as a kid. But I will have to say that I was a WWF kid. I say it all the time that I didn't start watching really WCW until I wanted to get in the business or was in the business. WWF, because of the comic book character type thing, watched it as a kid like that. But I have to say I watched a lot of wrestling at the Chase as well, because my childhood was watching it with my dad. So he was always wrestling at the Chase, being, a St. Louis native. And then he would also switch to the WWF. But yeah, WCW definitely once I became a worker, because you wanted to see how to do different moves, and most of the WWF was a 5 move set. So
Well, and what you're talking about right there, wrestling at the Chase. We lived in, I was born in Centralia, and we lived in Salem. And like my grandmother, she went to wrestling at the Chase all the time. She saw Johnny Valentine and Harley Race.
Nice.
And Bruiser Brody and Flair at some random high school in Mount Vernon, I think it was. And like she gave me, I've actually got it right here somewhere. She gave me, a photo album that has the Bruiser Brody Flair match in it.
oh
It's
yeah.
like, yeah, it's just she was around everything, and she actually, when she was a kid, she started watching as a kid. So this is the 40s we're talking about, 40s, 50s, and she had a little black book where she was writing down results in this little
That's
black book,
awesome.
and she gave me that little black book years ago. So that's one of my most prized possessions as far as wrestling memorabilia goes, is the notebook my grandmother kept.
Oh
Keeping up
yeah.
with results. So yeah, the wrestling the Chase and that whole area in general has a really rich history in wrestling. When I was growing up, we had when I was in Salem, we got uh, obviously we got Crockett and we got WWF and we got World Class. So she was a huge Von Erich fan too. So I got to see all that kind of stuff too. So it's kind of that's a weird combination of things when you think about it, but that's what it was.
Now to bring it all full circle, have you talked with Herb about this black book? See if any of those shows were his shows? Because I thought he went out
I
towards
have
Mount
not.
Vernon, didn't he?
I don't think I've mentioned that to Herb yet, but I can. I may bring it to the next event and see if he recognizes anything.
Yeah, I thought he used to say that he went all the way out to Mount Vernon.
Yes, but you're dating Herb way back. He wasn't promoting in the 40s and the 50s.
Right.
He's got a 50-year
No, but
career. So
we did mention Brody though, and he took Brody quite a few places around Southern Illinois.
yeah, but that wasn't in the 40s or the 50s either. That was around the wrestling of the Chase days. So you're looking at like tops 63 to, I mean, what the Chase go about 9 or 10 years, I think was no, it
Yeah.
went a little longer. 83. I think 83 is when, or 82 is when it folded. Larry Matisick started it back up as a St. Louis Wrestling Club, I think, in 83. I might got the name wrong, but I know Larry started his in 83. So it did go, but you're dating Herb really long, and
Well,
he's
he's been around forever.
already about 50 years. So I don't know that we need to add another 25 onto that.
He's been around
Well,
forever.
let's date you, Greg. At what age did you start getting into wrestling? Did you start pursuing it?
So, like when I started, this is the late '90s we're talking about. When I was in high school and stuff like that, it was still kind of protected. There wasn't a lot of wrestling schools like there is now. I mean, it felt like you had to know somebody that knew somebody that knew somebody that knew the handshake. That kind of thing. So, of course, me and my buddies, we wanted to wrestle, so we built a ring, and we were backyard wrestling, of all things, right? Well, at the time here in West Tennessee, Memphis Championship Wrestling was a developmental territory for the WWF, right?
Yep.
And they would come to New Bern, Tennessee, which was my hometown. They used to come to New Bern, Tennessee once a month, and they had William Regal. They had R-Truth when he was K-Crush. They had Daniel Bryan when he's still under the hood. They had, the Headbangers and Reckless Youth, and just you wouldn't believe the talent, top to bottom, that this thing had. And like they were drawing 30 people in my hometown.
That is
Yeah.
crazy.
So
So
that's how.
my buddy, who was getting started with me, my buddy's dad was a police officer in our hometown. So he went up to the promoter, Terry Golden. He said, "Hey, listen, my son and his friends are trying to get in wrestling. Can you help them?" So Terry Golden, being the genius that he is, he asked us to come down, and he worked out with us a day just to see what we knew, if we knew anything, right? And he liked what he saw. So he said, "Hey, we'll put you guys on in an intermission match, right, on the next show." So for the next month, we tell all of our friends, hey, we're wrestlers. We're going to be wrestling on this thing. We're wrestlers,
Mm.
And, we get there and Terry, we're not in the locker room with Regal and all those guys. We're in a separate thing completely by ourselves, completely away from everybody. Intermission match ended up being semi-main event. And there was 200 people at this event.
Nice.
So we went out there and we did what we thought we knew about professional wrestling. And it went okay. No one died. We didn't do anything egregious. You know what I mean? And that was it. And we worked there for several months as they did it. And then at the end, Terry lost his developmental deal. And we caught on with a local promotion. And that's when we actually got our full training and all that kind of stuff. But like just that initial, initial thing, that was, it's insane to think about. Basically the first time that I took a bump in the ring, I had a match that night,
That's
which is
crazy.
not recommended in any
No.
way, shape, or form. But that's my story.
I mean, that's awesome to actually be thrown in the mix of all those guys, or at least on the same card as all those guys.
Yeah, and some of them were pissed. They didn't like the fact that we were doing it. I now I completely understand. But like
Right.
Reckless Youth, for instance, Reckless Youth, he came over to our locker room and was like, "Hey, kids, keep your head up. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm glad you're getting into business." Because he kind of came from that same mold that we were trying to do. So like
Right.
he was very he was very good to us as far as like giving us encouragement. Hey, don't listen every way. Keep doing what you're doing. You'll get there eventually. And even William Regal, his same way. And he started out when he was a teenager too. So after the match, he found us and he came up to me and he said when you kick out, bloody kick out, because I was kicking out like Ric Flair's 2 3/4 count every
Yeah.
count though. Every time I got pinned, I was kicking out like that. So he was telling me, hey, save that and actually kick out. And it was cool. Like he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to impart any knowledge on me whatsoever, but he knew that we were going to be a part of the business, whether anyone liked it or not. And we might as well be good at it.
So on the flip
That's one
side, did
guy.
anyone come up to you and say, "Hey, kids, just get the hell out. You don't belong here"?
No, because they didn't want to disrespect Terry because he was the promoter and it was his decision ultimately. But like there was a lot of cold shoulders. You know what I mean? Like no
Yeah.
one really. The rest of the crew didn't say anything to us or acknowledge us at all. Those. I think I talked to Kay Quick for a little bit. But like other than that, like and Daniel Bryan was cool because you know he was still in the mask and he was doing the Hacksaw Jim Duggan as the American Dragon.
Oh, really?
So so he was still getting used to everything. So I mean, yeah, there was guys that were cool, but some of it's just they didn't say anything to us and just kind of let us be.
How old were you when you were doing this?
18.
Wow.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
was
I
an
just
early
my,
start.
my buddy, he was actually younger than me. He was like 16 and a half, 17,
Damn.
So
Did
Now,
any of your other buddies that you started with, did they stick around as long as you have?
there was literally about 30 of us
Damn.
from the ages of 13, 14 years old to 20 in this little group that we had. And there's like 3 of us left
wow.
that are still involved in wrestling in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, everyone else quickly got away and got out. And then the ones that did actually get in and last a little bit, they about 10, 12 years in, they were done too. So, there's only about 3 of us left.
Yeah, and that's crazy too, because Tennessee is such a wrestling state. I'm originally from the Humboldt area in Tennessee, and I mean there is wrestling every week, and you can count on it.
Yeah,
I
Humboldt's 30 minutes from me. It's,
yeah,
so like I tell people all the time, like, and this is, I don't know how deep you guys want to get into this, but I have, I believe in God. I have a huge faith. I had major heart surgery in 2017, and that kind of changed my life in situations like that. But of all the things that happened, all the things that had to happen for me to have wrestling save my life, because that's what it did. for my heart condition. One of the things was getting moved to here, because here there's a weekly wrestling show. I can't throw a rock without hitting a weekly wrestling show, right? And anywhere else, you guys know this, not everywhere has weekly shows. I've got buddies that live in all across the country, and they have to drive 3 hours to a show that runs every 6 months. You know what I mean? And here we are in West Tennessee, and like literally, there's probably 15 to 20 weekly wrestling shows of some kind going on.
Yeah, see, and that's what's great too. It's just that it's not. I mean, it would be great if it was one promotion working Monday through Friday or Monday through Saturday, but it's a lot of little promotions that's doing it. But I mean, still great for a worker because they always try to keep it in a different city, right? They're not
Well,
all in
no,
the same city.
no. Like Dyersburg, for instance, like my main town is Dyersburg, Tennessee, and Dyersburg had 2 wrestling federations for the last like 15 years. But like just recently, we're the lone game in town now. So it's a weird dynamic. It's like, everyone talks about, oh, everyone needs to work together, blah blah blah, this blah blah blah. Well, here's the thing: if I book the 20 best guys in my area, right, the other 40 guys that we don't book, they're just going to start their own show.
That's true.
And that's just the way it is. So there's always going to be multiple things like that. So I've just done a really good job here of separating. These are my guys. This is our company, and the rest is over here. You know what I mean? I try not to muddy the waters too much.
That's what we kind of do here too as well because yeah, we have a lot of promotions, and they're all within like the next town over, and just like you said, it's a bunch that weren't getting used on one card, so they, instead of just driving somewhere and being used, they start their own promotion.
Yeah.
And then a group leaves that promotion and starts another promotion, and then they all become friends again. So now they all work within like 3 promotions, and they just simply. But you're so close that you might as well just be one promotion again,
Yeah.
and that's why Herb's Wrestlers, we come up with this 25-mile rule, and it's from the border of St. Clair County. We will not wrestle for anyone else within that 25 miles. That way, we're protecting us, we're protecting Herb, we're protecting our our I hate to use the word storylines, but we're protecting our business, and I think that's the best way to do it.
Well, what helps us obviously is currently right now we're wrestling every Thursday, every Friday, and every Saturday.
Oh,
You know what I
nice.
mean, for one promotion. So I mean, guys can I gotta tell everybody, like, I don't tell you where you can and cannot work, but I can definitely tell you if you're going to work here or not.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? So
same
like,
right here.
if you want to give up my 3 bookings a week for that one booking for whatever, that's on you. You know what I mean? We try to treat everyone fairly. We try to treat. I've never had a money situation where I didn't pay somebody what we promised to pay them. I mean, I'm very upfront and candid about, hey, this is what we can pay. If you don't have a problem with it, if you have a problem with it, you're free to go somewhere else. That's not the issue. So we're just trying to keep everything as a straight line. Like I said, we're very much a teaching school. Right now I have my academy, and we've got 20 students in my academy.
Nice.
And with the academy, the thing with it is, for what was happening for a while there was, I would train someone for a couple months, and then somebody would get in their ear and say, well, Greg Anthony doesn't own you. You can go do this and you go do that. And, they would leave and do whatever, and they would never complete their training.
Yeah.
And it was just bad business all the way around. So I eventually had to get a lawyer buddy of mine that, I went to school with. He drew me up a legitimate contract. And like, this contract is like, it's got some, like, one of my favorite things in it is, if you do leave me, then you can't wrestle anywhere else for the duration of my contract. Right?
Oh, wow.
But if you leave me, you can buy out of the contract, and I get to set the price of how you buy out of it. And if I agree to the buyout, then you still can't wrestle within 300 miles of my promotions. And 300 miles was because in the territory days, 300 miles was the difference between a drive and a flight. If the promoter booked you 299 miles, you drove to that town. If he booked you 305, then that was a flight to that town. So to me, that was a legitimate number that we could put on and say, well, this is my territory. It's 300 miles radius. If you want to work outside my territory, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
What's the name of your academy?
The Pro Wrestling Mid-South Academy. I didn't want to muddy the waters with that either.
I'm glad to hear that St. Louis problems aren't unique to St. Louis.
Oh no, they're very like I said, when I started going to CAC and I started traveling around the country and wrestling stuff like that, I saw that everyone was having the same problems. And I wanted to, when I came back, I didn't wrestle in my hometown for close to 8 years because it was just, there was a bad reputation here with alcohol and drugs and pedophilia and all that kind of stuff. And when I came back, I had two choices after I got done with the traditional championship wrestling run, which was I could either, promote myself and try to get booked as many places as I could for as much money as I could for as long as I could, or I could come back and start my own promotion and try to clean up my hometown because I was tired of being in my hometown, being at Walmart or something like that and telling people, hey, I'm a professional wrestler, and people going, really? You're a professional wrestler? You're part of that? Because it had that reputation that it was not a place you could take your kids or your family or stuff like that. So I wanted to clean up that perception completely, and that's what we've done. There's no alcohol, there's no drugs, there's absolutely no pedophilia kind of stuff because I will call the cops on you in an instant.
That is awesome.
And that's SCW, that's one thing that we're all proud of too. It's a family entertainment. You can bring your kids any age and have fun and be in a safe environment.
I tell people all the time that you can bring your 7-year-old daughter or your 70-year-old grandmother, and they're not going to hear anything out of the way at my show. You know what I mean? And we try to, obviously, people go off the rails sometimes, and I have to have issues with that. But, right. I mean, for the most part, we've reined everyone in, and they understand that concept. Most people do not, we aim things towards kids because most people that are 40 years old do not wake up and go, hey, you know what? I want to be a professional wrestling fan now. Yeah. Unless they've got kids that are professional wrestling fans. So, if you get the kids, you get the parents. It's just simple business. And we want to provide something. We're a Christian-based company too. We have a ministry that's attached to our organization, that I'm a part of. So, it's all the way around. We're trying to do something good for our community.
I mean, that sounds awesome. I'm glad that you're able to do that because, and I know that the wrestling business has always had that stigmata of, all drugs and unfortunately the pedo stuff. And, that just recently got aired again. When they always bring up Jake the Snake and talk about his story, his life, and his father, being the worst of the worst. Even Jake, had his demons with his drugs and alcohol. And I'm glad that he turned his life around. But yeah, that whole Southern style was definitely known for that stuff.
So do you have a website, a Facebook page, something for your promotion you can put out there real quick?
Yeah, Facebook, just Pro Wrestling Mid-South. Instagram too, Pro Wrestling Mid-South. The pedophile stuff and stuff like that's not, exclusive to Southern. We had, a lot of AWA stuff, and there's been stuff going on everywhere. Portland, Florida, Puerto Rico, everywhere. But especially in WWF. So it's a problem. It's a problem for society, and definitely a problem in the wrestling business. There's
sick individuals everywhere.
There's sick individuals everywhere, and our job is, my job is as a husband and a father and stuff like that is to, I'm in charge of the spiritual well-being of my family. You know what I mean? And I don't want any kind of element like that around my family. You know what I mean? I think most fathers would feel the same way. So,
Oh,
You know,
definitely.
we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that kind of stuff doesn't happen.
Man, that's awesome. Um, all right, speed you up a little bit. Well, no, let me backtrack. You talked about liking the heels, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard. Who is the baby faces that you like? Because I know Tennessee is a Jerry the King Lawler town, well,
Right.
city or state.
Right.
But
So yeah, so when I first moved down here, like I said, in Illinois we got WWF, Crockett, and World Class. So when I got down here, I'm flipping through the channels one Saturday morning, and lo and behold, who do I see? Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee,
yes,
right? And I'm like, oh, what is this? I've never seen this wrestling before.
yeah,
And I started watching Memphis wrestling. So like I was always enamored with it as well, but like babyface wise, I was still very like Sting. Obviously, I love Sting because what kid at my age did not love Sting? I mean, that was just
right.
ridiculous.
Blonde
But
hair
like
and the face paint.
Ricky Steamboat was another one I loved. Brad Armstrong was another one I loved. You know what I mean? I just like I was always there's a certain style of wrestling that I was always kind of just drawn to. You know what I mean? The Rock and Roll Express, the Midnight Express. Bobby Eaton was, I talked about the heel stuff, but Bobby Eaton was one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. You know what I mean? Like it was just Bobby did everything better than everyone else. You know what I mean? He took a hip toss better than everyone else. He took a backdrop better than everyone else. He did an elbow off the top and the leg drop off the top better than most people. He took the post on the outside when he get thrown to the post. That's the best post in wrestling. Period. And that's who I stole mine from. So I mean, and that's the thing. I stole a lot of his stuff, before I'd even ever met him. Because he was one of my favorites.
So I guess
I
maybe this is a good chance to fast forward here. Then, what was it like to team with him?
Um, I mean, it was literally like a dream come true. Because what had happened was I've been wrestling about 8, 9 years at the time, so I was pretty polished. And I was a singles guy. I was a heavyweight champion most places, and Bobby was moving to Arkansas, and he wanted a young guy to team with in Arkansas and a young guy to team with in Tennessee, so he could do tag stuff in both places. And I was picked for the Tennessee guy, and there was another guy that was picked for the Arkansas guy. Well, somebody got in the Arkansas guy's ear and basically told him this wouldn't be a good idea. Like, you need to concentrate on yourself or something. I can't remember what. I don't even know what they said. I don't even care. But he turned down the opportunity.
wow.
So, so I immediately went, I'll do both.
Oh yeah,
So then I'll make the Arkansas bookings and the Tennessee bookings. So, we became Midnight Gold. Brian Thompson is our cornet esque like manager. And, for 2 years, we were like, it was fun because we were booked like the stars. Like Bobby was the star. But I mean,
right.
because it was Midnight Gold, we were booked as a star. So people would build up these big shows and then they bring us in on the big show to wrestle whoever their tag champs were or whatever it was. You know what I mean? So it was fun to be in that kind of spot. But Bobby, I tell people all the time, as great as Bobby was as a professional wrestler, and he was one of the greatest in-ring performers of all time, he was a better person. He was literally the nicest guy you would ever talk about meeting.
Yep.
He he never let me take a pin the entire time we were Midnight Gold. He
Really?
refused. He refused for people to beat me. The promoter would come and go, okay, we're going to do this, this, and this, and we'll pin Greg. And Bobby would chime in immediately, go, we're not pinning Greg, we're pinning me. He said, I'm
Wow.
Bobby Eaton. It's not going to hurt me to get pinned. He said, he would tell me all the time, this is for you. I want you to come out on the other side of this better than you were.
I mean,
And
hands down. I mean,
That's
can't
awesome.
believe that.
that's what I'm
That's
saying. How many
awesome.
guys of his level, would do that for a young guy,
Right.
Not many.
you know? So, and that was the thing. And that was the deal. He knew what the deal was. He was older. Obviously, he couldn't do all the things that he used to do back in the 80s and the 90s. And he knew I was there to be the workhorse, so so he could continue to get wrestling bookings and people get their money's worth. So it was he was very appreciative to me for playing that role, you know? So, like, and there'd be times, I'm going to tell you right now, there'd be times I'd be in a tag match with guys that I'd known for a while, right? And we'd be going, you know, we would be working. And, like, I would look over in the corner, and Bobby had this look in his eye like it was 1985 again. You know what I mean? And I would tag him in, and all of a sudden he's going. You know what I mean? Like,
That's awesome.
because he was Bobby Eaton. He didn't want to be the weak link in a match. Are you crazy?
True.
So he would get in that. He had a lot of pride in his professional wrestling and just loved the business in general. And he wanted to give back and stuff like that. And he went out there and he would work. You know what I mean? We did a lot of the same tag stuff that he done throughout his career. We did I would hit the guy in the gut and he would do the neck breaker. We would do the thing where he would shoot the guy off. We would blind tag and he would shoot the guy off and he would go for a back elbow and the guy would duck the back elbow, but I'd be there and I'd hit him with a European uppercut like Regal used to. You know, we would do a lot of those same spots. So like he was, obviously it changed the entire trajectory of my career teaming with Bobby.
Yeah, I read that you got a lot of gold with him. As one page I read about you, that's when they said you had that moniker, the Golden Boy, just racking it in.
Well, I was the Golden Boy way before that, but
Well, they
I was
said
actually
you were living to the moniker Golden Boy, just taking title after title.
right. Well, actually, originally I was the Golden Boy without Greg Anthony. I was just the Golden Boy. I didn't have Greg Anthony attached to it until a couple years after I started. But my son asked me one day, like, how many titles have I held? And we just bullshitting around trying to count. And it's somewhere in the 80 title reigns. You know what I mean? So I think I've lived up to Golden Boy as best I can. You know?
And again, currently the heavyweight champion of a promotion that's 93 countries?
Well, it's 94 promotions in 32 countries, yeah.
32 countries.
Yeah. But 94 promotions, that's what I tell everybody. That's legit. You know what I mean? Like, people want to talk about WWE.
Right there.
Yeah, people want to talk about WWE and AEW and stuff like that. That's great and stuff like that. But the honest opinion is there's more of us than there are of them. You know what I mean? There's more independent guys out there trying to make a living at it, than they are. I mean, I do this for a living now. So, like, it's harder to do it on my end than it is on their end. So 94 promotions across 32 countries. I mean, like I said, the NWA now is not really an alliance of promoters. It's a one-man garage band. So, I mean.
All right. I'm going to pause you on that because I want to talk about the NWA, Billy Corgan's version. But let me backtrack you on your NWA stance. You're a 3-time NWA heavyweight champion. Can you tell me? Huh?
A 3-time NWA national heavyweight champion.
Okay, national. I guess I didn't catch that. But still, NWA. What was it like working for the NWA, the old NWA, and what was it like being their champion?
So, like, the NWA stuff, like, I've been working for the NWA off and on since I started. One of the guys that actually helped after that run with Terry Golden I was talking about, we caught on with an NWA company, and that's where I became the NWA Southern Junior Heavyweight Champion. And that was my first championship in the business was that NWA Southern Junior Heavyweight title. What happens with the NWA is whoever takes over the NWA tries to erase the previous generation's stuff. And it happens every time. Like when I was Southern Junior Heavyweight Champion, at one time, on the top 10 list on the NWA website, I was ranked above Jushin Liger, which is ridiculous. But that's what it was. I was ranked above Jushin Liger on their list. Well, the next people that took over, they didn't acknowledge that, acknowledge me, acknowledge any of the guys that were doing that. They had their own group of guys that they wanted to push and do this with the title and that with the title and just whatever. So eventually when we came back around, we got with the NWA, it was the same deal. Like, Bruce Starpa took over and, okay, this is his time to do whatever he wants with it. And he loved, the Empire. The Empire was me and Matt Riviera and Tim Storm and Steve Anthony. And, Tim eventually ended up being World Heavyweight Champion. Riviera ended up being a world tag champion with Rob Conway. Steve Anthony was a world junior heavyweight champion. And, like, I eventually got the national title. But, like, my dream was always to be the world champion, you know? So when I was the national champion, before I got the national title was cursed. And I mean that literally because, like, the last 3 or 4 guys that had held the title end up getting injured and couldn't drop the title. They end up having to do tournaments and all kinds of different stuff to do it. So, like, my thought process was, well, I'm gonna take the NWA National Heavyweight title and I'm gonna knock it out of the park. You know what I mean? I'm gonna have these tear the house down matches. I'm gonna cut promos. I'm gonna do everything I can, and then I'm gonna pitch myself as the world champion. You know what I mean? Because that's what I wanted to be. And somewhere along the line, someone didn't like that, so they started backstabbing me and back talking me to Bruce.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, they loved what I was doing the national title. It was the greatest thing they'd done. You know, keep doing what you're doing. You're in charge. Do whatever you want to do, that kind of thing. And the next thing I knew was like, oh, we don't want you to be champion anymore. You know what I mean? And it just kind of went away like that. You know.
Oh wow.
And then when we found out Bruce was going to sell to Corrigan, I blew a gasket. because at CAC one year, I went to Billy Corrigan's seminar, his wrestling seminar, just to see what he had to say, and I was appalled at his thought process on professional wrestling. So
He
for
had
me,
a seminar before he was even like promoting or anything.
well, no, he had his own promotion. Remember, he had that promotion in Chicago
Yeah.
for a while there. Revolution Wrestling, I think is what it was, or something like that.
I didn't know he was behind that.
Yeah, he was.
Before
He did,
his
remember, he did the
TNA
EC,
stint.
he did the ECW stuff with Paul Heyman. He was on their television several times. He was always trying to get in the business, and eventually he did that Revolution thing in Chicago, and it kind of just didn't go anywhere. And then, like I said, then he decided he was going to, because he went to Impact and went to TNA. Remember, he was going to buy that, and they pulled the rug out from under him there.
Yep.
And then he thought, oh, okay, well, I'll just buy the NWA. So he's going to buy the NWA. I'm livid because I'm like, this guy should not be in charge of 3 of the greatest letters in wrestling history. You know what I mean? Because I've heard his thought process.
Yeah.
So there's like there's like a waiting period in between when he actually buys the company. Like, he's going to buy it, but like they're waiting for, October when all the contracts come up when he's actually going to buy it. So in that time, he starts baby-facing all the promoters, trying not to cause an uproar, I guess. And actually, he sent Dave Lagana to my building in Dyersburg. Like, they were talking about actually taping the NWA show at my building, but they didn't want to use me or my guys, which was ridiculous, right? So we're about, we're thinking, at this time though, we're thinking, well, he's going to let everybody stay with the NWA. We're going to renew our contracts. Everything's going to be cool. We're still going to be NWA. About 2 weeks before the contracts end in October, he says, well, what are you guys going to do when you have to rebrand? And everybody's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, you guys have to rebrand. You're not going to be NWA October 1st, out of nowhere. So, like, I had 2 weeks to rebrand everything. Rebrand our Facebook, our website, all the materials in the building, all that kind of stuff. It was a huge, huge hassle. So, and like I said, now, what he's actually done too is, like I said, I'm a 3-time NWA National Heavyweight Champion. Damian Wayne is a former 3-time NWA National Heavyweight Champion. We've never been contacted about coming in to work. And now some of these titles that have really important title histories have these huge gaps in its history because he didn't do anything with them. He stripped every one of the title besides the 10 pounds of gold and just concentrated on the world title. And then eventually he started doing world tag titles, national title, started eventually filtering them in. But he just, he basically hamstringed the history of the NWA. And now, like I said, he's no longer an alliance of promoters. It's just him. It's just him doing fake old school, as I call it, faux old school.
Fake old school.
One of my favorite stories about it is when they first started, there was a lot of buzz around their program, right? Like everyone was putting over how old school it was, how the studio looked great. They were doing this kind of stuff, blah blah blah, and like they made a point to get on their Twitter and say, "Hey, we're not your nostalgia wrestling. We're going to be more progressive than any other company in the world. We're going to do this and we're going to do that," and just basically shot down the fact that the only reason you were over in the beginning was because you're doing it old school, right? Well, then Edge Edge gets on Twitter and says, "Man, you guys are doing great with I love the NWA feel and the look. The studio looks great. I love the old school stuff. Blah blah blah." And then they get on there and they're like, "Oh, thank you, Edge, so much. Yeah, we're trying to do this." And I was like, "You hypocritical." That was one of the most. It was sickening that they were doing stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I take offense to that because I'm not fake old school. I believe in this. I believe in old school. I believe in the way professional wrestling should be presented and be done. And they're using it as a punchline a lot of times, and using it just to further whatever their agenda is. My thing is I want professional wrestling to be like this, coast to coast and border to border.
Yeah, I only went to one of their 2 shows in St. Louis under him, and I didn't get an old school vibe or anything like that.
No, bell rings and it looks like everything else.
Yep. And then, who was it, Jim? They had some old school legends sitting in the crowd. Didn't acknowledge them.
Yeah, and that particular show, they brought in J.J. Dillon, and they brought in what was his name? Barry. Oh my God, I can't think of it. He was a horseman.
Wyndham?
Barry Windham. Thank you. They brought them in, let them have like 5 minutes of promo speaking time, and that was it. But
that was the first night. I don't remember seeing them out there the second night. The second night they were just sitting out in the crowd. No acknowledgement.
even Haku was out in the crowd, and he has nothing to do with wrestling at the Chase, and that's what they were trying to play homage to. But Barry never did wrestling at the Chase, just J.J. Dillon, but they brought Barry in.
Right.
But Haku, if they wanted, who else has a badass history, the legend behind Haku, and he's just sitting there, and they didn't acknowledge him, even to the live audience, and then say, "Hey, Haku is right over here," or anything like that. They just totally bypassed him.
Yeah, would have been nothing for them to have the announcer get up in the ring and be like, "Hey, in the crowd tonight, let's give a round of applause to anything."
Yeah.
How are you going to claim to be old school, but all your wrestlers are gymnasts?
Well, I mean, that's pretty much nowadays. I mean, that WWE is all like gymnasts too.
Yeah, but they're not old school.
Right.
Nothing wrong with gymnasts, but stay in gymnastics.
I previously had told a lot of people that the current NWA product is just a lotion with a little bit more money. Because both nights, I went to 74. Both nights, it was just like a show that we would have put on. Except for they were in a classier building. Not that we've never wrestled in a classier building, because we're actually going to be wrestling there this year. But you can just tell they just had a little bit more money. But other than that, it was just like a regular local promotion putting that show on. It wasn't no big move.
I've got friends that work there, and more power to them. Get in where you fit in. Get the exposure, get the money, whatever your issue is. But at the same time, like I can't sit here and promote them or say that I'm a fan of them because, like you said, when the bell rings, it's exactly the same. You know what I mean? Like why not? Why watch them over anything else? If you want to be a true alternative, then you have to be an alternative. You know what I mean? the fake old school stuff to me is just, you can have the aprons and you can have the buckles and you can have all that kind of stuff, but if you're not presenting real professional wrestling, the way it was at Wrestling at the Chase, the way it was for the Crockett's, the way it was for Memphis, you know what I mean? Then what's the point?
You all right there, Jim?
I say you shut your microphone off, Jim.
Yeah, your microphone's mute. You're mute.
Texan's not our most technological guy.
Oh yeah, trust me, I know. I have problems myself sometimes.
So in the meantime, people, go to our website and check out Bruiser Brody and Ric Flair's championship match Wrestling at the Chase if you want to see some real old school.
I say, speaking of some old school, I did stumble across your YouTube page. Mid-South, was it Mid-South Wrestling? I mean, the page was Greg Anthony. All your videos you have on there, though.
Yeah, Pro Wrestling Mid-South.
Yep. I got a lot to keep me busy now that I found that.
Yeah, I've been uploading a lot of stuff on the Greg Anthony page, like all my stuff from early in my career when we were wrestling in Rector, Arkansas, and places like that. So getting off VHS and trying to get it, on YouTube, so it has a chance of surviving. So
Well, that's one thing when we were talking about doing the podcast, it was mostly to, one, we're all fans, but two, to preserve the things of the past because every day another legend dies and all those stories are gone.
yeah, absolutely.
I had just mentioned that I recently on my Facebook started collecting pictures of different legends I've met over the years and whatnot, and someone had commented on there about wanting to meet some of them. It's like, oh no, they were talking about going to the Cauliflower Alley Club. It's like, just do it. Like Jerry Jarrett, just got to meet him at this last one, and he's no longer with us. Like, take every day right now. Like, don't wait.
Yeah, that was a big issue. I remember on Facebook about 6 months ago or something like that. It was like, about taking pictures and stuff like that, and like Bobby, we always go back to Bobby on this kind of stuff, but he had the best one ever. He told me, he said if you go take a picture with a guy and he thinks he's too big of a star to take a picture with you, he's the mark, not you.
Yeah.
So
I like it.
I think that's a really poignant thing for Bobby Eaton to say, and I completely agree. If you go take a picture with a guy and you're a wrestler and you're just you're a fan of this guy and you want to get a picture with him and he tries to big time you just because he got this opportunity and you didn't, or whatever the case may be, then he's the mark. You know what I mean? He's the guy that thinks, he's up here when he doesn't remember, someone had to put him over.
Mm-hmm.
Just to chime in, can you guys hear me yet?
Yeah.
All right, perfect.
We were going to send a search party for you.
Man, I tell you, last week we had another guy on. It was probably the perfect podcast that we ever had. Nothing went wrong, but this is a new phone, and I tell you, seems like every damn week something else goes wrong with it, where I connect to my headphones in the other room, or my internet, dies on me real quick and shuts me off. It just
I tried to tell you to stay away from Apple. Samsung's where it's at.
I should have never switched.
Does your phone have a rotary dial on it?
That's the one on his wall.
Sometimes I think it does.
My wife was a middle school teacher, and they had to explain to kids what beepers were the other day, or last year, not the other day. And like the kids were, their mind was, well, how do you call back on a pager?
You find a phone.
Well, that's what they told them. And they're like, what do you mean you just find a phone? Like you borrow somebody's phone? And they're like, no. And they had to explain what payphones were.
Yeah.
I heard you guys talking about CAC. What brought that up?
Just talking about like getting to meet people while you still can. Our photographer, she was saying that, she wants to get out there to meet some of these legends. And I mentioned, Jerry Jarrett. It's like, do it now because they might not be with us in the future.
Yeah, I totally agree. CAC, and then like the The Lou Thez one that I was just at this weekend. I mean, to me, it was like CAC, but a little bit more personal. Um,
Laid back.
yeah, it was well, it was late CAC. There was probably last year where we went. There was probably about 400 people in the room. Whether it be the wrestlers they were honoring, other wrestlers, local wrestlers, and then a lot of fans. A lot of fans went there, and I think it had to do with being in Vegas.
Yeah.
The fans have a lot of stuff they can do, but Iowa, uh, there ain't nothing to do. So if you're not at the Hall of Fame when they're having their seminars or their podcasts going, or the Hall of Fame or the Impact Wrestling show, you're not doing anything. There's nothing to steal your attention away. So what I'm trying to say is, if you weren't a diehard fan of wrestling, or you weren't a wrestler, or you weren't being honored, you weren't there.
Right.
So even in the when they did the Hall of Fame, I bet you maybe 150 people were in that room. So literally after the awards were handed out, you were able to go and meet them and talk to them. And, um, you know, what was really cool, it was a Thursday through Saturday. There's nothing to do there. So, if you go to the bar at the hotel, that's where most of the wrestlers were. That's where I was. So you would be sitting at the bar, you'll be drinking with like Haku and JBL, and just a lot of the old timers too. Because oh man, I'm gonna butcher his name. It was Joe Malenko was there, and they were honoring his father.
Yeah.
And I tell you, he looks just like his brother, Dean. As soon
Yeah.
as I seen him, I was like, "Man, is that Dean over there?" And it was Joe. But
Yeah.
they tag team for a long time.
Yeah.
But
Well, Boris was one of the top trainers.
yes, and
I
that's
mean,
what
the
he was
list.
getting awarded for that night, was for his training.
Yeah, the list of guys he trains is ridiculous. There's a list of it on Bob Cook is on my Facebook, and he posted a list one time that he had found of all the guys that Professor Boris Malenko had trained, and it was it was impressive to say the least.
Yeah, I
I
bet so. I
think
mean,
Dean Malenko was one of the guys that got me into watching wrestling. I know it's not Boris, but his boy. And
Yeah,
I mean, just the way he could float around, move to move, his transitions were the only person I can compare him to. Like, and I wasn't alive back when Lou Thez. But I have to rewind to Malenko and Lou Thez matches. Like, how did he get from here to there? Like, it just doesn't make sense until you watch it 10 times.
right. Well, Lou was he moved like a panther. He was like 6'3", 6'4", maybe something like that. He was very sleek and lean, and he just move everywhere. Bobby actually used to use one of his. Fez would get the guy in the corner, and he put his elbow against his chin, then he'd pop his hand. So he kind of cheap shot a little elbow to him. And Bobby used to do that quite a bit too. And I stole that from Bobby, ergo who stole it from Fez, and that's what a lot of kids, especially my trainees, stuff like that, I try to tell them, like, don't just limit yourself to who you like. Who do you like, and who did they like? Who did they get their stuff from? You know what I mean? Like, for every
Mm-hmm.
Shawn Michaels, there was Flair. For every Flair, there was a Ray Stevens. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lineage that you can follow of these guys. Undertaker, didn't just magically become the Undertaker. You know what I mean? Like, he watched the Spoiler, and he watched guys like that, to get a lot of that kind of stuff from. So I mean, if you follow those lineages, you'll find out a lot of stuff. You'll see guys do stuff that's just amazing. Like the biggest misconception about wrestling, especially in the 50s and 60s wrestling, is it was a headlock for an hour, or it was an armbar for 30 minutes, whatever. And there are some cases of that, but I was watching something not long ago, and a guy took a tackle, kipped up, and gave a guy one of the most beautiful backdrops I've ever seen in my life. You know what I mean? And they built up to that, and they did that, and it was amazing. They didn't go do a Canadian story after that because obviously it didn't exist. But even if it did, they wouldn't have done it. you know, so it's fun to see that kind of stuff laid out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I train at the Ace Academy. I'm one of their trainers on Tuesdays, and I tell all the students, you got to watch the black and white, the Thez, the Buddy Rogers, because you can do all the flippy flop. We don't teach any of that, but you can do all the flippy floppy if you want. But if you know the basics, if you know that catch can, you can go anywhere. And I preach that. If you tell them that if you go to Tennessee or if you go to California and let them know that you know the basics, you can chain wrestle, you can have a match. And they're not going to worry about you dying from flipping off the top of the post onto the floor. Or man, I seen this one video today where I guess it was an outside show, and this kid jumped off of like it was like a lean-to shed, and he was on top of it, and he jumped off into the ring. And I'm thinking, what does that have to do with wrestling? I mean, you're in the wrestling business. So I mean,
Well, what I tell my kids is you don't have to be able to do everything, but what you do, you must do well. You understand? And like, it's just gotten to the point to where no one's trying to make sense of anything. They're just going out there and doing whatever, you know. And like, it's almost to the fact that I call them masturbation matches, where where the guys they don't care what the crowd wants, they don't care what's actually going to get over, they don't care about heel baby. They just want to go out there and they want to show everybody, hey, look what I can do. You know what I mean? Masturbation matches are just that. They're just for you. You know what I mean? And that, to me, that doesn't have a place in professional wrestling. We worked in Texas when me and Matt Riviera were tagging as the Empire. We worked in Texas, and this company we worked for, it was very Ring of Honor light. You know what I mean? There was a lot of guys that were trying to do that fast paced spot Ring of Honor kind of style, and some of them were good at it, and some of them were bad at it. But that's what they were trying to do. And
mhm.
I was wrestling this one guy, and it was one of those situations where I think they had booked out the whole card, and me and him were left. Right, so we're like, okay, we'll put them two against each other, and you could almost tell that he wasn't excited to wrestle me at all because he knew I was very old school. You know what I mean? He
Right.
wanted to do all of his spot stuff, and you know, I just kind of went to him and said, hey, listen, this is what we're doing, you know, and kind of laid everything out for him. Very simple, very basic, very heel, very baby, that kind of thing. And we went out there and tore the house down. He couldn't understand it. We get to the back, and he's dumbfounded. He's like looking at his shoes, like how the hell did that just happen? Like, how did I have a better match with Greg Anthony than I did my buddy I've known for 15 years when we went out there and killed each other for 30 minutes? You know what I mean? And it was like, because we told a story and we established that, I was the bad guy and you were the good guy. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not rocket science, but it's not kindergarten either. And once guys kind of get that through their head, I hope the light bulb will go off.
Right. There was a match this week, and I ain't gonna name names or anything like that, but two different styles clashed. And I was after I got done wrestling, I snuck into the crowd to watch the rest of the show because this is a show that I'm never normally on.
Right.
So I wanted to see, what everyone had, but I knew the two that was in the ring, and I knew it was two different styles. One was more old school, one was a little bit more flippy floppy, and you can tell in the beginning of the match that the flippity floppity one was trying to do his stuff, and the other guy just shut him down. And then it turned into the old school match because then that guy had to defend himself. So it became a very old school good match to watch because you knew that the guy had to think now, and not think like what fast paced move I can do. It's like how can I stick and move? It made the match so much better. And I tell you, a lot of people at the end of the show was talking about that match. Um,
Yeah. I
but
mean, and that's the point. Like, when young guys come into my company and they're working me, like they'll come up and be like, okay, what are we doing? And I'll be like, I'll see you in the ring.
Yep.
And they'll just like deer in headlights, like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I'll call it in the ring. I'll see you out there. Sometimes I don't even call especially when I'm wrestling my guys, like guys I've trained, I don't even call the finish. Like I call the finish in the ring,
Yeah.
like everything. And like, that just blows people's minds. So like the kids, I'll call that whole match. And like I said, it'll be the same situation we had in Texas. I'll call the whole match and it'll go off without a hitch and we'll get to the back. And they're just like, how in the world did that happen? And it's like, because you have to know how to wrestle. You have to know how to work. You have to know the psychology of professional wrestling. Someone had to beat it into me, and guess who it was? Guess who beat it into me? Flash Flanagan.
Really?
Oh.
So let me tell you this Flash story. So we're wrestling each other, and like I said, in Rector, Arkansas. Friday nights in Rector, Arkansas. We wrestle a match. I'm heel, he's baby, and just a really good match. We get to the back, and Flash is like, he's like, man, that was a really good match. Thank you so much. And like, you know how Flash is. He's not super appreciative. Anyway, so he started. Yeah, he was kind of uncharacteristic, but he was, man, that was a really good match. Thank you so much. Blah blah blah. So then the next week we come back, and he goes, hey, I watched that match again, and I go, hey, really? He goes, yeah, it wasn't as good as I thought it was. And like my heart, yeah, there's Flash. So then my heart kind of sank, and I was like, what do you mean? He's like, some of the things you do are so good that it outshines me as a babyface. What you need to go out there and do is you need to go out there and mess with the people. You know what I mean? You need to talk crap to the people, stuff like that. And I'm going to be 100% honest. I argued with Flash for 3 weeks.
Wow.
Because I was like, no, I want to be like Nick Bockwinkel, and I want to be, wrestler kind of guy. And we just argued about it for 3 weeks. And then finally I just threw my hands up in the air and I was like, okay, Flash, you win. I'll do it your way. Right? And I went out there that first night and I started messing with the people, and the light bulb went off, because all of a sudden, when I was working this hard to get this much reaction, all of a sudden I started working this hard to get this much reaction. And it was like, okay, now I understand what you're talking about. And that just changed my whole, viewpoint on everything after that. Then it became what is the smallest thing I can do and still get the biggest reaction? You know what I mean? And I started playing with that kind of stuff. And then once you kind of get that psychology of it, it opens up the whole world that you didn't know existed. And that's the fun part. Anybody can, if you do a 630 splash or whatever it's called off the top rope and people react to it, well, guess what? You did a 630 splash. They're supposed to react to it. You know what I mean? But if you can take something as simple as, whoa, stop, and give them a quick punch to the face, and they still get that reaction, you know what I mean? Then that's wrestling. That's working, I
always think of it like, back to your example, like that 630 splash. We're going to talk about that for about a week, but not until next month's show. That story, though, that's going to keep me interested until next month, where I get to see what's going to happen next.
Well, like Cornette says, there's 3 reactions in wrestling: boo, yay, and wow. Boo and yay draw you money. Wow doesn't draw you money. It's like you said, it's what's next. You did a 630. Can you do a 1260? Is that even possible? You know what I mean? Like, eventually you hit a wall somewhere. You know what I mean? That's why New Jack, God rest his soul, after the 12th time he jumped off the balcony, did we really want to see it anymore? I mean, we'd already seen it. What are you going to do? You can jump off the actual arena, the top of the arena on the outside? You know what I mean?
Do what happens now is they do more dangerous shit in the ring, and legs are broken and worse.
Yeah, I mean, there's been so many horrific injuries, in the last 20 years. It's ridiculous. I'll say this, the last 10 years,
Yeah.
and I truly believe, and I hope it doesn't happen, but I truly believe that someone's going to die in the ring on national television. I saw Darby Allin one of the first weeks AEW was running.
I hate that coffin drop. Hate it.
He did the coffin drop with the barrel. Remember they had the barrel because Cracker Barrel was a sponsor, so they had the barrels out there. So he took a barrel and put it on his back and jumped off the top rope to the floor onto the steps, and someone moved and the barrel broke. Thank God, because if the barrel didn't break, then he would have just broke his back and his neck across the barrel. And that's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid something like that's going to happen. And when something like that happens, it's going to hurt the business from top to bottom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's going to be commissions. People are going to start talking about it on USA Today, and it's just going to be madness.
Well, and I think if you work old school, you're going to have a longer career. But if you're constantly trying to outdo yourself every match and do something more high risk, that's going to shorten your career. So, I mean,
Yeah.
what do you want? What do you want? A longer career or a shorter career with a little bit of pop?
There's plenty of stuff that I can't do anymore. You know what I mean? Like there's stuff that I used to love to do, and I could probably still do it if I try, but I just don't want to risk that injury. It's I can do something else in that place. You know what I mean? That will get just the reaction that I want. I don't have to do that. Like I used to love to take the Chris Candido spot, which is where the guy's in the corner and I charge him and he pitches me like he's pitching me to the apron, but I missed the apron and hit my face on the mat on the apron. But the problem is when I do that now, like it feels like my knees are going to blow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like I just don't do that anymore. You know what I mean? It's a sad factor being 42 years old and being wrestling 23 years and having 4,000 matches and stuff like that. But I would much rather be able to wrestle 3 years from now than do that spot.
Right.
A lot of what you say reminds me of somebody that was trained by Harley that I got to work with, Superstar Steve Fender. And I would love to see you in a feud with him.
Yeah. Me and Steve have kind of crossed paths like ships in the night, but we've never actually wrestled each other.
I would love to see at least one match. That man has taught me so much from wrestling him. Like, just the way you think about everything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. Harley's, obviously one of the, one of the founding guys of this kind of thought process. Harley was very, very methodical, but he did some amazing things. You know what I mean? Like he was almost 50 years old, and he was taking that backwards bump in the buckle to the floor. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? He just made everyone look like $1 million.
And then, this for the backstage guys only. If you can get Superstar or Attila to talk of Harley stories, pure gold.
Right. Yeah.
I'm gonna chime in with my Flash Flanagan story. We were on the same card once, me and you, but so I don't know if you see me, but I'm big, I'm slow, and I do some chain and then like explosive moves, suplex, stuff like that. I wrestled Flash. Now, and let me remind you, I'm big and I'm slow. So I wrestled Flash. We didn't take any bumps. We just worked moves, headlock and hammer locks and stuff like that. And we probably did less moves in that match and got over with the fans than my regular slow, fat speed. It's just amazing. I'm not a quick guy in the ring, and he even brought me slower and still got a bigger pop. So it's just crazy.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I've wrestled with broken ribs on several occasions, and when you're wrestling with broken ribs, especially when we're wrestling 2-3 nights a week, and you have broken ribs, and a lot of this stuff is already booked. You know what I mean? I've only missed like 3 bookings my entire career, so like, I made those bookings and I wrestled with broken ribs, but like I didn't bump. You know what I mean? Like I crumbled on a lot of stuff and sold and made stuff mean more and did this and did that.
Yeah.
And no one was the wiser. You know what I mean? Like no
Uh-huh.
one knew that I had that something was wrong and stuff like that. But the boys knew because they knew I was wrestling with broken ribs. And then they I go out there and wrestle in the main event for 30 minutes, and they go, "How the hell did he do that?"
Bobby, one guy that he's wrestled, at least it's in uh, his list of people that he's wrestled, Cahagas. You remember Cahagas? He used to come around. Yeah, he was a great guy. Um,
That's another tough mother right there.
yeah, I was going to say he's pretty stiff too, but great guy.
I'd say
So
the one I saw on YouTube for Greg Anthony, the guy that actually turned me from a bad guy to a good guy was Bull Bronson.
I've
Yep.
wrestled Bull. He's a good guy. I like wrestling him.
I
It's weird.
I
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. I said
Well, I
I
was going to
named
say,
Bull Bronson.
go ahead, man.
He's a character.
I named Bull Bronson.
No way.
Yeah, like he was when I was booking television in Southern Illinois for AAPW. So, and they came to me, and then someone goes, "Hey, listen, you need to take a look at this guy. He's 6'4". I think he was 350 pounds at the time, maybe something like that." They're like, "You need to take a look at him." And he was, he was going by Misery with a Z, and he was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, all that kind of stuff. And he came to me, and to his credit, and this is what I love about some guys, like I'm pretty good. I can see somebody and kind of say, you know what, they need to do this, or they need to be like this. There's a
Right.
blueprint for them that would work, and it involves this. You know what I mean? Some guys don't want to do that. They would just want to do whatever they want to do and just, forget the years of experience or the booking or any of that kind of stuff. The Bull, he came to me and like I said, he was wrestling his Misery. And I said, man, I really like you. I think think you got potential. You move quick. You're a big guy. He said, but I don't like the name and I don't like the look. I said, I'd like to change it. He said, what would you want to change it to? And I said, I'm thinking about Bull Bronson, and I just want you to wear black, bikers, black boots. And I told him the basis of this is you're the guy at the end of the bar that no one wants to mess with.
Yeah.
And he goes, that'll work. And then he did that. And then I think that helped him and put him on a different path than he was going. And he's been a for our company for Pro Wrestling Mid South. He's like a 6-time unified heavyweight champion. So
Wow.
he's been a big part of our overall history.
Is he still down there?
He was down a couple months ago for us. Yeah, he was in a program with the unified heavyweight champion now, Brandon Ray. So
Okay.
yeah, so he periodically every couple of years or every once a year he'll pop in and do some business for us and pop out.
That's awesome. I liked him. I worked him a couple times. Very down to earth guy. Very laid. Yeah, great
He's
guy.
he's
I really liked
he's
him.
a loyal guy, man. Like he's been a really good friend to me, and he's like I said, he's very loyal. There's been we had a situation where basically these people took a company out from under us at one point, and he was one of our main stars in the company, and they begged him to come back, and they were offering him stupid money to come wrestle for them, and out of respect for us, he never did. He stuck true to us and stuck with us. So it's stuff like that. You don't hear a lot about that kind of stuff in wrestling, but I mean, like when people do that kind of thing for you, you try to do right by them as best you can.
Right.
Yeah, for me
Yeah.
it was they just kind of he was a good guy when her brought him in, and I was a bad guy for like 10 years, and they teamed us up. It was like just a random odd pairing one day, and he's like just started messing with me out there in the ring, and like the fans just switched right there and haven't looked back since.
That's awesome.
Let me ask you, were you, how did you get involved in this AIWF? How did it get 94 promotions under there? How did that? Because you don't hear that anymore. It's basically one for all and all for one. How did you get 93 promoters to agree to this belt?
I mean, the thing is, like I say, it's been in existence since 1992. So they've been working on this for a long time.
I've
And with
never
the
heard of them.
it's mainly started out on like North Carolina area. That's mainly where it's been at, is that East Coast kind of area up and down the coast. But like I said, they've been working on it since '92. If you go back and look at their title history, Buddy Landell's in there, and Ricky Morton, and Damian Wayne, like we were talking about, and um, Doug Summers. Remember Doug? Loverboy Doug Summers
Okay,
from
Loverboy. Yeah.
AWA. He's a former champion, things like that. But with the absence of the NWA, a real NWA, and that's actually an alliance of promoters, I mean, they were always kind of like the second cousin to the NWA kind of stuff, But now
Okay.
the NWA isn't doing that kind of stuff, So I think he found a bunch of, he's got like I said, 32 countries. He's got a lot of these international promotions that are that just want to be able to claim some of our champions, and like be a part of something here in the States, and us kind of share together. And they have AIWF, Japanese titles and European titles and all that kind of stuff. So it's just something that help promote everyone in their brands, and make it seem like it's a part of something bigger, because it is. That was one of my biggest selling points when I was part of the NWA was, hey, we're not just some local yokel company. We're part of the NWA. Well, it's the same thing here. We're not just Pro Wrestling Mid-South and West Tennessee. I'm the world heavyweight champion. And, there's 94 promotions across 32 countries.
It's crazy to me that they're all getting along to form that united front. I mean, that's great. I never would have thought that would have happened anymore. That's the closest thing to NWA now. I mean, I'm going to have to do
Yeah.
a lot more research on them just to get
Yeah.
me up to speed.
It's in some promotions, it's not like, like we run 3 times a week. But I mean, like some promotions run once a year. Some promotions run quarterly. Some promotions do this and that. So it's like, it's just those 94 promotions. They're stretched out all over the place. So I mean, and
Right.
some are good, some are great, some are subpar. We know that kind of stuff. But hopefully, we'll be able to send talent out, and help these companies, and maybe put them in the right direction. Because like I
Yeah.
said, WWE, AEW, great, but like the independents, there's more of us than there are of them. What's the majority of the wrestling business? Even though WWE, is always going to be, like the Walmart of wrestling.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, more people are going out every weekend to see these local shows than they are WWE and AEW. So, there has to be there needs to be some kind of common thread between them,
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing they're the Walmart. We can be the Target.
Right.
Well, Target's a
Bobby,
little bit more classier, I think.
I'm saying, Bobby, can you go out and come back in? Because your audio is really muddled now. Every time you hit the mute button, it comes back a bit worse.
Is that better or go all the way up?
No, it's just muddled. It was,
Hey, while he's doing that, so your next, I'm assuming your next show is A Night to Remember, Friday, July 28th at Tinley Park. Of course, that's up close to Chicago. What's the name of the federation on that one?
It's WAW. It's the North American. It's the one that Page's family has over in England. This is the North American version of that company.
Nice.
But actually, I'm wrestling Thursday night in Jackson, Tennessee.
Oh, all right. Well, I was just going off your Facebook, and I didn't see one for this Thursday. So,
That's fine. But yeah, I'll be in Tinley Park Friday, and I got a big title defense against Scott Spade, and apparently he has his mistress in his corner. So, this isn't my first rodeo, so I'm going to be, I'll have, one eye on her, hopefully,
Right.
and make sure she stays in line. And, sometimes that doesn't work out too well for me, but we'll see.
Right. I understand. We got a
Sounds like
couple
you're dealing with the
managers
same
that
thing
like
I am with the Canadian with his mistress, Glenn Williams.
Right.
See, now your audio is perfect, Bobby.
Hey,
I
Whatever you
scooted
did,
closer to the phone, too.
whatever you did there, Bobby, it was great.
I say I also scooted closer to the phone, so that might help.
where has been the best place that you've ever worked? Has there been a certain match at a coliseum or an independent place that was just like we have a place up here called the MAC, a Missouri Athletic Club, and it's such a throwback to wrestling at the Chase because they're all in tuxes. All the women are dressed up. They're smoking cigars. They're actually placing bets on our matches right there in front of us, where you can see money transferring hands. So it's such a throwback for us. But what's one of your favorite places that you have wrestled? And to top it off, who's one of the favorite guys that you've wrestled against?
Okay. So, one of my favorite places to wrestle, this is going to sound really weird. So, the first time I ever wrestled in Louisiana, there's a town called Sunset, Louisiana. Very small town. It's one of those, there's one highway in and one highway out kind of towns. So, if you were a heel back in the day, in the
You're in
70s,
trouble.
you were in trouble because they waited on that one highway for you so they could slash your tires or whatever it was. But anyways, we wrestle in Sunset, Louisiana. We get to the building, and I walk out in this arena, and it's like, it looks like it's built for wrestling. It's Coliseum seating with like benches all the way around, and it's got this perfect square in the center, and it just looks like it was just built 100% for professional wrestling. And I said, was this built for professional wrestling? And they go, oh, no. This is where they held the world championship cockfighting in the 70s.
Oh my God.
So, so that always kind of stuck with me. I love that arena just because of that's just an awesome answer to the question, right?
Right.
And then also, like I'm in, like I said, I'm in Louisiana, and I'm not a big football guy. I played basketball in school, so I asked somebody, in the back. I said, so the top college team is LSU, right? And they're like, yeah. Well, who's their biggest rival? And they go, oh, Alabama, absolutely. I go, okay. So I went out and cut a promo before the match, and I said, listen, I'm pound for pound and inch for inch the best of the best in professional wrestling today. I'm a one-man walking legacy. I'm like the University of Alabama Rolling Tide. And they immediately started booing me, right? And I said, and my opponent tonight, he's like the LSU Tigers, and I'm going to roll through him just like they roll through y'all. So we get in the match. We finally get to the heat, and I got him in a chin lock, and all of a sudden I hear the crowd. They start going, LSU, LSU, LSU. So we did a big match where I was Alabama and he was LSU, and he ended up beating me, and the crowd went ballistic
Oh,
for
that's
LSU.
awesome.
Oh, how about you and Bobby? How about you and Bobby right now? He's wearing an SC LSU jersey.
Mine's not a real college. I have the Water Boys Louisiana Mud Dogs jersey on.
Mud Dogs.
Bobby
There you
Boucher. Not quite the same. I am an OU fan though, which I will fully admit is not hanging in with LSU or Alabama.
Yeah, unfortunately. Then you said,
Your
and who was
favorite
one of my
opponent?
favorite opponent? That's a tough one. Like, me and Jay Lethal had a really, really, really good match. Like I'd never met Jay Lethal before, and I'm not a very physically impressive guy. You know what I mean? Like, I'm 5'8". I don't look very intimidating most of the time, but when I get to wrestling, it becomes believable then. And he was the same way. He didn't know who I was or whatever it was. We get out there in the match though, and we just start tearing the house down. And he he was in love with it. He told me to smack the shit out of him. So, I got to smack the hell out of Jay Lethal, and I beat Jay Lethal while he was the Ring of Honor television champion.
Wow.
And I was the TCW junior heavyweight champion at the time, and I beat him on our television. So that was kind of historic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of in there. Another guy that I've always had really good chemistry with is a guy that's younger, and he's up in the Northeast area now. His name is the Professor Jacob Edwin. And he spent a lot of time down here with us. He lived down here with us for a couple of years, but then he went back up home to Maryland. And me and him have had some really good matches. We actually had a 1-man, 1 hour Ironman match that's on YouTube. You can find, and he's just a really good guy. I mean, he's a really great wrestler, and even though I don't agree with his tactics a lot of the times, but I mean, he's a very talented individual, and we definitely tore the house down on many occasions.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, you said Thursday's your actual next show, or was it Friday?
Thursday in Jackson, Tennessee.
All right. So give us a rundown of normally your weekend shows, because you said there's 3 days that you normally work down there. Can you tell us the building and what you normally, the time and all that stuff normally?
Yeah. Every Thursday, Jackson, Tennessee, 2970 Old Medina Road at the Old Medina Indoor Arena. Bell time 7:30. Tickets are only $10. Then every Friday night, Ripley, Tennessee, 207 South Washington Street. Bell time 8 o'clock. Tickets are only $5.
Nice.
Then every Saturday night, Dyersburg, Tennessee, 1827 St. John Avenue at the Herb Welch WrestlePlex. And tickets are only $5 there as well. Bell time 7:30.
Man, you guys can't beat that. If you guys are looking for a show, even if you're around here, Tennessee is not that far away. It's hop, skip, and a jump. I used to make that all the time. Got relatives that live down there. My mother's side all still lives out there in Humboldt. Some in Memphis, an area like that. So I might have to come down and catch one of your shows just to see how you guys do it.
I was just thinking that we might have to swing by Belleville, and we'll drive down there.
Yeah.
More than welcome.
I mean, since my family's still down there, we might have a place to crash for a couple of days, and we can probably catch all 3 shows in one swoop or something.
Yeah,
Even better.
That'll be nice. All right. So I know we always like to keep it down to an hour. I think we blew past an hour. Probably about going on 2 hours right now, because the time my phone cut out, and since it's been back on, we've already gone 40 minutes since that happened. So I don't want to take too much more of your time. It's been a great interview. You're awesome. I would love to have you back. Maybe we can have you back after this Friday's show just to see if you kept your title. Oh, before I call it off, since it's 94 promotion, and how many countries?
32 countries.
32 countries. Have you gone at any point in your career? Have you ever gone overseas yet? Have you wrestled for the lights?
No, unfortunately, that was one of those NWA things that was supposed to happen that never happened.
Okay,
but,
well, maybe this title run that you're on right now will get you overseas, and because that's a world heavyweight belt that you're carrying now. So I know there's a lot of bullseyes and a big old X on your back for it. So
absolutely.
Yeah, but I do want to say I appreciate you coming on. We've only you only met me one time, and you were kind enough to give me your phone number, and I asked you if you would be on, and I was really shocked that you obliged so quick, meeting me only once.
Well, I hope you guys can tell I love talking about professional wrestling in any way, shape, or form, and what most people say when they talk to me is they see the passion I have for professional wrestling. So, and I hope that always rings true. And I hope anytime anyone wants to talk about professional wrestling, I'm more than willing, because hopefully stuff like this will create the next generation of fans.
And we can do a reaction. we can do a reaction and commentation on your heavyweight champion title match. Because
Yeah.
we were going to do
Yeah,
that,
we
but
get
we
queued up and
we're
everything,
running
but
long.
Right.
And
yeah,
along the lines of your passion there, I hope we see you back a lot more in SICW because we haven't got a chance to mix it up yet. But I know I was wrestling someone else, and you were able to give me a little bit of advice after, and very much
Yeah.
appreciated. I hope I can keep learning.
Absolutely. We're all learning. I study and learn all. I still watch an hour to 2 hours of wrestling a day. So it just kind of depends on what's going on. But like I'm always looking for something.
it's so true. I was reading a book today, and one of the in my office, and one of the ladies walked by, and she goes, "What are you reading?" I said, "Come on now, my life revolves around wrestling. It's a book about wrestling, But it's just one of those things. But all right, sir, I appreciate you coming on our podcast. We'll definitely have you on again because it's been a great night. I love talking to you. And maybe next time you come on, you'll be talking about how you defended and still retained your AIWF championship belt.
That's
But
right.
until then, thank you from everyone at the Squared Ring Podcast. Please, if you like this kind of content, we try to talk to other promoters, other wrestlers, and different promotions as well. Please like, subscribe, comment. Hey, I know a while back I was on your Facebook, and I think you were looking for your 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Did you get it?
I am still looking for 1,000 subscribers. I'm like 150 away or something like that.
What's your
Well,
YouTube
So
channel?
I said I subscribed today when I found it.
What's your
yeah.
Well,
YouTube
So
channel?
your pro wrestling mid south has 1,200, so you're over 1,000 on that one.
yeah, I know. But then the other one's got all the old Memphis wrestling videos that have all the
Yeah, I know I
all
was
the
watching
views.
some of that earlier.
That's the
So
one I subscribed to today, the Golden Boy.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
Golden Boy Greg Anthony on YouTube.
I'll
Okay,
have all your
let's
links in the description, and it'll flash on the screen when people are watching.
perfect.
Awesome.
Let's get this gentleman over 1,000 subscribers. It's always great when we can help someone out. Getting to that mark just lets a lot more people see on was it your For You feed.
Yeah,
Getting wrestling out there. That's the goal of everyone.
yeah.
Getting our shows over, getting other people's shows over. Let's get them over to 1,000. But for that though, have a good night, guys. I'll see you next week. Bobby, I'll see you. We got our show. So you guys have a good night. We'll see you around.
See you guys.
See you there.
Yep.
Bye.